I'm Dan Sachs, co-founder of AppDirect, and really excited to be here with Founders 15, speaking to our AppSmart community. And what we really wanted to do is kind of step back from the tactics of the security space and some of the specific services that we sell, and really look at an industry thought leader who can help position some of the more complex and kind of real elements of security that really kind of penetrate the psyche of businesses and governments. And I was really grateful that my good friend Jay Kaplan accepted to speak with us here, as he's one of the most foremost experts on security, and definitely from many that I've spoke to, behind the scenes conversations that we've had, really insightful and exciting tidbits. So by way of background, Jay, who's joining us, is the CEO and co-founder of Synack, a premier security testing platform. And he shared a vision with his co-founder to really revolutionize cybersecurity by combining human intelligence and artificial intelligence to create a scalable, effective security solution. And really, even before Jay started the company, he served in many different cybersecurity related capacities. One with the Department of Defense, including the DoD's incident response team and Red Team. He also was a senior cybersecurity analyst at the NSA, or National Security Agency, where his focus was supporting counterterrorism related intelligence operations, where he received multiple accolades for classified work conducted well at the NSA. And among other achievements, Jay was also selected as one of the Forbes 30 under 30 in enterprise technology. Just a note, while Synack is not currently available for resale in our catalog, I'm really grateful that Jay spoke to us as a thought leader and can give you some real insights on government and business security. And I couldn't be more happy to welcome Jay to our State of the Union webinar. So welcome, Jay.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. What an intro. I really appreciate it. Great to be
There
here.
you go. So let's jump right in. So what got you started in the security space in the first place, and how did you end up working at like the NSA?
Yeah, so I guess my introduction to security started at a pretty young age. When I was a teenager, I started a shared web hosting company. These are the days before Amazon AWS and Squarespace and Wix and all. If you wanted to get your website online, you basically rented space from a company who co-located that server space, and then you would go upload some raw HTML documents, like old school. And one of the most fascinating parts of that business to me was locking down our customers' websites. We actually had one customer's website get defaced and breached, and I think it was that moment that I'm like, huh, how is that possible? And then I started going down a rabbit hole and getting more and more interested in the field. And one thing led to another. And uh, you know, fast forward to college, the NSA and DoD runs a program called CyberCore, where basically they fund you through university, and then you go work for the National Security Agency after, kind of scholarship for service. And so it was really the most of the foundational knowledge that I have today is from my experience at the NSA. But I think the fascination started at a pretty young age, well before that.
Got it. So, most of us have watched like 24 or Homeland and all these different, shows that talk about, the NSA and the CIA and the DoD. But other than kind of fantasy, it's really hard to see what manifests in real life. And you've kind of had that behind the scenes experience. But, what was it like, starting with your experience at the DoD, and, what perspective did it give you on the reality of, security as a threat to businesses and government?
Yeah, so interestingly, I had an opportunity to kind of work on both sides of the fence. So DoD, an agency called the Defense Information Systems Agency, it's a combat command agency which helps stand up the backbone of the Department of Defense and all of the Navy, Air Force, Marines, et cetera, just to make sure they're online, they're secure, they're running. It was also an agency that's responsible for setting up the networks for the president when the president travels around the world, so that he has secure communications, and can put out, if he wants to speak to his advisors, et cetera. He's a very easy way to do that wherever he goes. So it was at that agency that I actually got more exposure to the defense side. So being an incident responder basically means that when something happens, you're the one that's going in and doing the forensic investigation, figuring out, okay, how do we make sure that this doesn't happen again? How did the person get in? What information was leaked? And then red teaming is more kind of, hacking for defense. So basically, taking more of an adversarial view of a specific environment and figuring out if an adversary is going to try to break into this environment, how would they do it? So I kind of straddled both, but it was much more defensive oriented. And then as I transitioned to the NSA when I graduated college, that was on the complete opposite side. So that was basically on the attack side as a state sponsored computer hacker, which arguably is the coolest job you can ever have in the federal government in the cybersecurity space, in my opinion. Um, but it gives you a very unique perspective, right? You take the best capabilities around the world, best people, and you have a very important mission. In my case, as you mentioned, Dan, it was counterterrorism focused. So we were literally, trying to hack into foreign terrorist communications and networks for the benefit of trying to understand what were they planning next. Um, and incredibly fulfilling job. But I think it makes you realize pretty quickly that the incumbent solutions on the market that help, these foreign networks and companies, et cetera, try to, lock them down. They're not working. They haven't scaled with the times. And I think that was kind of the aha moment for me when we, 5 years into NSA, when we decided, me and my co-founder, to leave and try to do something about it.
So it seems like even as technology and the security space is advancing, there's still, people who are ahead and people who are behind. And, you gave the example of working in counterterrorism and how, you could probably outsmart many other, terrorist networks and groups. But when we think about like day-to-day vulnerabilities that could hit a business, what really defines kind of the sophistication or sophisticated people, versus people who are laggards? And how do people and the industry really stay on top of that evolution?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question. Obviously the threat gets more and more sophisticated over time and it changes. I think if you asked me 5, 10 years ago, what is our greatest threat to businesses and, government agencies, I'd probably tell you state sponsored attacks. So, whether that's Russia, China, North Korea, et cetera. Most sophisticated attacks, they have, a lot of resources and money dedicated to stealing, intelligence, stealing, uh, important, just uh, sensitive information from any corporate network um, to help advance kind of their just their strategy and kind of what it really has shifted though, and I think if you look in the past just 2 to 3 years, I think our greatest threat right now is much more tied to crime syndicates. So people are recognizing that they can actually make money by hacking into foreign networks. The ransomware is well on the rise. I'm sure you guys read about it all the time. Reality is if you put down a piece of ransomware inside of a network and you say like the only way you're going to unlock, this machine or this network or this data is by paying some sum of money. Honestly, most companies are just paying it. And it's a result of the insurers. The cyber liability insurers are just saying it's a lot easier for us to just pay this money rather than um, try to remediate and claw back from backups. And so what this has done, it's kind of created this new market where crime syndicates are probably the most prevalent attackers. Whereas before there was no real easy way to make money, and obviously with cryptocurrency, that has only made it more easy, where you can't track the actual funds that are being sent to these syndicates.
And fascinating to see that evolution. I think with state-sponsored issues, it's really hard to address, especially if you're in the U.S. And we've across our network and community and my peers, I've seen a lot of incidents in tech companies where foreign state-sponsored attacks come, and there's really no one to disclose it to. It's hard to cooperate. It's hard to track it down. So there's almost incentive to not talk about it because you really don't know who to go to for help. But on the crime syndicate side, I assume that um, the ransomware and the impact on businesses is more prevalent. And there are kind of people out there. You do want to address some of these issues, and you want to safeguard your business. So maybe this is kind of leading into Synack a bit. But can you kind of talk to me about how companies can help really protect about against some of these modern threats? particularly ones that have such strong financial impact?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say most of these attacks quite frankly, they're not that sophisticated. Generally speaking, these attackers are successful because most companies are not doing the basics. They're not properly handling patch management. There are servers that are not updated with exploits available. They are not doing a certain level of code review from a security perspective. And then in our business, it's we're in the pen testing space, so it's really about how do you kind of take best in class security researchers, point them at your environments, and try to understand if someone was malicious trying to break in, how would they do it? Similar to my work, at the on the red team at DoD. Um, and so, I think, and this is all table stakes, right? This is all basic stuff that every company should be doing, and then it extends to the people as well. I mean, you probably hear that phishing attacks are probably the most successful type of attack right now, just because people are the least common denominator. So having appropriate levels of education within your organization to make sure that people understand what does a malicious link look like, and what is something that looks safe. What should you look for? What does a suspicious email look for? How do you report it? How do you, you even see like CFOs sending wire transfers out based on, emails coming from random sources, which blows my mind that it still happens, but it happens all the time. It's crazy. Um, so there are tons of vectors, but I think people really need to think as much as possible like the adversary, and that's kind of how we approach things. It's if it extends across the entire attack surface. But if we are trying to break into an organization, or an adversary is trying to break into the organization, we want to understand like what would they do? What would they target first? They'd go through reconnaissance. It extends even to your suppliers, the companies that you're integrating with. So even if your data is not necessarily housed on your own network or your own applications, those third parties, they could be just as vulnerable, and that's really sensitive information to think about as well. So I can go on and on about this, obviously, but there are some key, I think, strategies that most companies should employ to at least make sure they're buttoned up at the very minimum bar.
Yeah, and for our group of technology advisors on the line, they have the ear of the CEOs and CIOs of many businesses across America, and they're always looking for how to position the right technology. And security can sometimes be hard to position in that there's a deep knowledge and there's so many broad threats. But I think some of the areas that you highlighted are ones that I think resonate and that are strong. So as you're selling to your business customers or as you're looking at, businesses that are adopting, security solutions, what are some of the key vectors in how to position to a business and to have them really, both understand the urgency and the importance to safeguard themselves in the right way?
Yeah, I think one of the challenging elements of cybersecurity is that there's so many disparate solutions focused on different parts of the problem. So it sometimes becomes daunting to take a look at you know, um, every company that's out there and try to sift through, okay, like what do I actually need to do? Like what should I focus on? And I think depending on, the size of business, the type of data, the type of technology, that will vary. But I think there really is no like manual to have a comprehensive security strategy. It's not like you go read the Security for Dummies book and you just follow go through the pages and you're good. Like it's so it makes things very complicated. But and there are more and more startups, coming out of incubators. They're getting funded by VCs, and so that even makes it more challenging. If you walk the halls of like RSA or the Black Hat Security Conference, which are the two largest cybersecurity conferences in the world, it is insane how many companies there are in this space right now. So I'm not really answering your question, but I think that the thing to ask your end customers is try to level set with them and understand what are they doing today, where are their biggest risks, does it extend beyond their perimeter, so to their suppliers, to cloud providers, where's their data sitting, and are they doing the basics to make sure that data is protected? And then there are a lot of different tools and techniques to make sure that data is safe. I should be remiss not to mention like Synack takes a very different approach to normal pen testing problems. So we have a worldwide network of freelance ethical hackers now in over 90 countries. And the goal for us is to create a much higher efficacy version of security assessments that most companies are engaged with. Previously, usually you'd use a consulting firm like a PwC or Deloitte or EY. For us, it's, let's deploy 100 of the top hackers in the world, obviously ethical hackers, to your environment so that we can understand, what are they successful at penetrating and what data are they able to expose. So it's a very different model, and that's just one example of a layer of the security stack that you can bite off, but there's a lot more you need to be doing.
Got it. It's super fascinating. And for your customers in particular, when you're positioning, your product alongside, like you said, the kind of diverse amounts of groups, is it typically someone who's had an incident that then says, okay, we need to bring you in because we realize the gravity of the problem? Or are you often able to position, effectively, just kind of knowing that people are looking for extra protection?
Yeah, it's definitely a little of both, right? I mean, I think a lot of big enterprises are very proactive. They have, security teams, a chief security officer that typically reports to the CIO, and then there's board level interest now, which we've never really seen before. That's really only started over the past several years, where boards are asking, "What are we doing from a cybersecurity perspective?" And CISOs are sitting in those meetings. So it's really interesting to kind of see the level of awareness happening at the highest levels of the largest enterprises in the world. So yeah, I mean, I think whether you have a security team or not, smaller companies obviously don't have the ability to hire talent, and frankly, hiring security talent is really really challenging today. There's right now 3.5 million open cybersecurity jobs that will remain unfilled through the end of this year. And when you think about those stats, it makes you realize, like, okay, like I'm probably not going to be able to hire them. So what else can I turn to? And for us, obviously, we can augment some of those resources, but it's all about layering on services on top of best in breed products, and enabling those companies to kind of do the services for them, which is more their core competency than most of these companies. So it's we're in a very interesting time as it relates to cybersecurity talent. It's definitely one of the biggest challenges of our time, in my opinion.
Jay, so thank you for joining us. This was fascinating, and I can clearly see the opportunity for the advisors to position into the future. So thanks again, Jay. Really appreciate it.